This Tactica vlog is for the new Battletech mech warriors out there. You've just picked up the game, you've got your mechs, you're ready to go. We're going to look at, in this vlog, the Tactica of different ways of dealing damage in Battletech. And we're going to look from kind of an overview of not only the different ways to deal damage, but some of the opportunities to look out for. This idea in Battletech, stuff happens in every game. If we can position ourselves, if we can be aware of opportunity on the tabletop, on the hex map, we're going to increase the damage that we do. Now, within that framework, really quick, two things are happening when you're dealing damage in Battletech and why it's so important. Yes, positioning is important. Yes, the mission is important. Yes, deployment is important. But these are force multipliers for damage. At the start of the Battletech game, whatever battle value you're playing, whether it's battle value, C-bills, putting down a number of mechs, you've got your forces and I've got my forces. Every turn, once we make contact, right, often at the beginning of a game, we're separated. Once we make contact, every turn, your forces are going to be getting weaker and weaker and weaker because your opponent is causing damage. Hopefully you're causing a lot more damage back. But every turn, you're getting weaker and weaker and weaker. So being decisive, not only in all phases of the game, but especially in the beginning when you have the most weapons on the table, is paramount. Now, Battletech is a dice-based game. You're going to roll the dice. Some people are lucky, some people not as lucky. But occasionally, every now and then, something interesting happens in Battletech. A critical where the engine just explodes. A critical where, for some reason, there's ammo in the center torso and it cooks off and blows up. A headshot, just something crazy, right? Something crazy happens where the more dice that you roll, the more chance for that happening. If I fire one shot at your mech, never tell me the odds, but someone will be able to calculate this. If I fire one shot at your mech and I hit forward facing, what's the chance of that being a headshot? Now, if I get 5 or 10 shots at that mech, that increases that chance. So in Battletech, but also in Wargaming, the more often you roll dice, the more of a chance of crazy stuff is going to happen. When it's your turn, I want you to roll lots of dice for certain things. When it's my turn, I don't want to roll any dice to see what happens. So within that framework, the first is, of course, ranged-based shooting. We've got long, medium, and short. Examples would be PPCs at long range, LRMs at long range. Then you've got large lasers, medium lasers, short range. You've got short range missile packs. You've got machine guns. You've got flamethrowers. You've got small lasers, autocannons, 2, 5, 10, 20. This idea of different ranges of weapons. Now, of course, the main thing with this is trying to cut down on those modifiers. Right? We're looking at top level, and I've explored more of these ideas, pushing them up to the Battletech playlist. But generally, I'm trying to bring down the modifiers that I can control, walking versus running. Range, hopefully being at the appropriate range for that weapon. Although sometimes I want to stay at short range, sometimes I want to get to close range, but trying to cut that down. Trying to make sure you're not in any cover, trying to catch you out in the open. Trying to fire at targets that have not moved numerous hexes that can stack these things. So I'm trying to bring my modifiers down. You, as the opponent, you're trying to run around, you're trying to get cover, you're trying to stay at the best range for you. You're trying to push those modifiers up. So I'm trying to bring those down. Second is redundancy. Looking for this idea of firing multiple weapons, or as many weapons as possible at the same target. The more weapons you fire, the more you'll roll, the more it will transfer. And then, of course, heat. Now, heat is a discipline in itself because some mechs, the Warhammer, the Marauder, they will run very, very hot. Some machines like the Rifleman, I'm naming classic machines that I love. I love these machines. It's just not designed to handle the heat load. So often you're only firing one side of the mech or the other. And then there's some machines like the Grasshopper that are cool running. Some machines where you can just fire away and you're never going to build that heat. But understanding heat, when to push it, when not to push it. Meaning, if I've got some range, if we're going to look at, let's say that Warhammer, if we're at range and I'm calculating, well, it's going to take you a turn or two to cross to close, maybe I will keep on firing both those PPCs and push the heat a little bit. But if a machine is close, then I don't want to fire those weapons, build the heat, and then now be dealing with negative modifiers, or worse, not being to counterattack. But then there's those times where just the opposing machine, the arms are blown off, the leg is hanging on, we've gone to internals, it's smoking, it's burning, it's barely firing back. If I fire everything, I can take this machine out. So maybe I will push the heat. So understanding the range. Now we close to physical attacks. When you get base to base, this idea of tonnage, right? Punching and kicking. Now, the main thing about the physical attacks, of course, there are nuances where you can't fire weapons in the limb that is making that physical attack, although I know there's a push-punch attack in the tactical ops book. We're just looking at core rules. So if I've got a medium laser in my right arm and I punch you, I can't fire that medium laser. The shooting phase happens first over the physical attack phase. So if I do fire that medium laser, thinking like a hunchback or something, if I fire that medium laser in my arm, then I can't make that physical attack. So there are some nuances that we need to be aware. But the primary thing with physical attacks is it multiplies your tonnage. The heavier the mech, the more damage that you're going to do. And the kicks transfer to the legs, so that's massive. And the punches go on a 1 in 6 chance. They essentially attack the upper torso. 1 in 6 chance of hitting the head. Hitting the head at any tonnage, besides doing that damage, can cause a pilot to make a consciousness check, a mech warrior, and a lot of crazy stuff. And if you do knock the head off, that's the end of the machine. So physical attacks can be extremely deadly. The thing to look out for this is the other weapons of the mech. If you have a mech that has weapons in the torsos and you're punching at close range, it can do a lot of damage really fast. Hunchback is a perfect example. Fire that autocannon 20 in the torso, right punch, left punch. Something like an Atlas mech. Well, an Awesome could too. An Atlas. Do I even want to close with an Atlas? It's got the autocannon, it's got lasers, it's got the punches, it's got the tonnage, a Banshee. Heavier mechs can really scrap a machine fast. But that said, light mechs, don't overlook them, right? If I'm an assault mech and I'm just wading through a bunch of light mechs and I'm like, look, I got no worries. I've got more armor bubbles in my right arm than the entire machines that I'm facing. Those light mechs, based on initiative and movement, if they get behind you, 1 in 6 head chance of hitting, but also rear armor. So even light mechs in the right position can do some interesting damage. The other thing we're looking for with physical attacks is elevation. Elevation. If you can have a mech at a higher elevation, this is where, depending on the terrain, but also city fight, city tech, if you're at a higher elevation and you kicking does more damage, but it goes off the punch table because of the elevation. You're literally kicking something in the head. Mastering the assault phase or the close combat phase or the physical phase is huge, especially when you find yourself in city fight, city tech, and you're just in very close quarters where you have to attack. Other elements to keep in mind: charging attacks, rushing attacks. This is literally where you run and slam your mech into an opposing mech. That's an interesting type of attack. And of course, death from above, my favorite just for the lulls, because it's probably not going to work. It's probably going to damage myself in the process. If I do pull it off, I'm going to be damaged. But the chance for glory is amazing. This is where you hit the jump jets or jump off of something and land on a mech with massive damage transfer up to the upper torso. Tremendous amount of damage. Of course, you're going to take damage on your legs. So the different opportunities of playing things safe with physical attacks, punching and kicking, and then pushing the envelope a little bit in terms of charge attacks and death from above. So understanding the different ways of dealing damage and the optimal ways of dealing it, and being very good tactically with it. Because again, going back to the start of this vlog, this idea, whatever your force is, whatever your battle value is, every turn it's getting less and less and less. You have a machine, a mech, that the armor calculated as battle value, the weapons as battle value, the entire makeup of it is. So if I take 2 hits and I lose armor, and I goes to internal and I lose a medium laser in my right arm, that's battle value right there that I just lost. So every turn you're getting weaker and weaker and weaker. So to understand optimally the different phases, the different methods, the different tech for dealing damage in Battletech,